As I read all of the personality theories, none really applied to Black people. That is, everything the researchers said about Black people related to the deficit model, that Black people had deficit personalities compared to whites on all of the psychological testing. So none of them had the basis of African psychology or philosophy. So I felt that what we really needed to do was develop an Afrocentric description of Black personality.
There's something psychological about African descent people, deeply rooted in our souls, in our systems, in terms of its cultural content, its spirituality. No matter where we are on planet Earth, there's this Africanity within us. And you find them in African people in North America, in Australia, in India, Southeast Asia, wherever you find African people, you find these various ways of approaching, adaptability.
So in 1981, I wrote a book on the collective Black mind, saying that we are a collective people. We have a collective community, collective philosophy, and that's the framework from which we should derive personalities of Black people. The collective Black mind is based on a concept of cultural bonding, groupness, togetherness, and African philosophy of the ethos, I am because you are, and because you are, therefore I am. I did not want to use white cultural terminology in developing this. I wanted to introduce African concepts such as Afrotyping, which means these are typical Black concepts, Black behavior, Afrocizing, how kids can be brought up in an African-centered culture. So instead of using self-concept, I use Weusi, we, W-E-U-S-I, meaning that we is the outstanding part of this personality theory, then us and I. In other words, the individual is really third on the list.
I wanted to capture this Africanity as a part of understanding the motivational system behind African American behavior. I invented this construct called African self-extension orientation. I was trying to refer to this elasticity, this fluidity of the African spirit, how it moves at a spiritual level, and how this energy in African people is always trying to extend itself beyond the physical boundaries of the individual to connect with other individuals or the collective of individuals. And so it had to have a genetic property in my thinking, because it was something that was fundamental to African descent people. The second construct in the model called African self-consciousness, I saw as necessary to explain what I call the efficacious functioning in a more African-centered way of the motivation in African American behavior. A third aspect of the theory was to explain abnormality, deviance in our behavior. So I introduced this construct called cultural misorientation, given the reality of contemporary African behavior, in terms of the manifestations of the trauma that we see in almost every aspect of our existence. And cultural misorientation essentially means the internalization of a European worldview or European consciousness in African descent people, which leads them to approach life, to approach adaptability in the world from the basis of a Eurocentric conception of that universe.
Who taught you to hate the texture of your hair? Who taught you to hate the color of your skin to such extent that you bleach to get like the white man? Who taught you to hate the shape of your nose and the shape of your lips? Who taught you to hate yourself from the top of your head to the soles of your feet? Who taught you to hate your own kind? Who taught you to hate the race that you belong to? So much so that you don't want to be around each other.
We have internalized an incorrect cultural orientation. It leads us to engage in behaviors that are maladaptive for an African person in terms of these behaviors. While they may lead to accommodation with the reality and environment that we're in, they don't lead to African empowerment.
The explanation of the widespread acceptance of Christianity may lie in the history of Ankoli's contact with the outside world. For much that is of non-African origin was introduced by the churches. Thus, in many respects, to be civilized or modern means to many Africans to be Christian. But even if we understand the factors contributing to the general acceptance of Christianity and other non-African concepts, the problem remains of explaining the different degrees of acceptance characteristic of different individuals. What kinds of personality traits, what kinds of individual experiences contribute to the process whereby one person does or does not adopt a new behavior pattern? This is the kind of question current psychological research in rapidly changing societies attempts to answer.
African self-consciousness core of our personality, because it is socialized, it's vulnerable to cultural modification. So it can be modified from its natural state by the institutional bombardment of Eurocentrism. And so what happens is that we develop an alien self-consciousness that's sort of superimposed upon our natural African self-consciousness. If our natural African self-consciousness is not being reinforced through socialization structures that are natural to African-centered reality, what we have is something similar to what W.B. Du Bois talked about in his dual consciousness construct. Two forces, these two motivational forces, one Eurocentric and one African-centric.
It's kind of like what James Baldwin talked about, and he says, for white America, basically, success means how quickly I become white. And when you have that as your standard, you can never be whole, because we're never going to be white, nor should we have to be white. We need to defy the lie of white superiority and black inferiority. For far too long, we've been operating from a Eurocentric paradigm. This paradigm has false claims about universality, and it has false claims about objectivity. It reflects an aggressive seizure of intellectual space. It has short-circuited creativity. It has led to the negation, the obliteration, the marginalization of the African presence in the world, of African meaning, of the significance of African activities. And it has led to kind of an inferiorization of African people, such that it is hard for us to just be us and do us.
This brother here, myself, all of us were born with our hair like this, and we just wear it like this because it's natural, because the reason for it, you might say, is like a new awareness among black people that their own natural appearance, physical appearance, is beautiful.
I felt it was a purpose. It was a special purpose. More so a meaning for me to be natural.
Wearing my natural, it like shows within me. It gives me more pride within myself.
For so many, many years, we were told that only white people were beautiful. Only straight hair, light eyes, light skin was beautiful. And so black women would try everything they could, straighten their hair, lighten their skin, to look as much like white women. But this has changed because black people are aware now that their own appearance is beautiful. They're proud of it. Dig it? Isn't it beautiful? All right.
There it goes. The fourth atomic